Good morning and welcome to another conversation with Mose. And as always, I pray life is treating you well, exceptionally well, wherever you are in the world, and that you're one day closer to your dreams, hopes, and aspirations coming true. Today, I have a special guest, and his name is FULTERIUS King. And we're going to be talking about his debut book of poems for Black Kings. So today's topic for today is Black Kings having a conversation about Black Kings. So I'll let him expound on who he is and his background and inspiration. So here we go. FULTERIUS King.
Good morning, everyone. So again, my name is FULTERIUS King. Um, First and foremost, I would like to say I'm a God living man. I put him first in everything I do. And I am the author of a book of poems for Black Kings, which was published on February 3rd and has also reached bestseller status on Amazon. I'm also a licensed mental health therapist and have been working in the mental health field for roughly 8 years now. I am someone who is deeply passionate about increasing access to quality mental health resources for Black men and Black boys, which led me to writing this book. I'm not saying the book is a complete substitute for mental health services, but I do hope it can in some way add to the journey of healing and self acceptance for Black men and Black boys. And on a personal level, I'm a proud gay Black man. I am a son, a brother, an uncle, a mentor, a friend, and I'm just fucking awesome. So, yeah.
well, congratulations on the Amazon, and that's a very nice resume, sir. I mean, that's awesome.
Thank you.
I first of all, I want to say thank you for accepting my invitation to do this podcast. And before we start getting into it, I really want to talk about the book from my personal perspective. I'm a poet myself, so I love poetry. I genuinely love poetry. So, and it really doesn't, I won't say it won't matter who it comes from, but it kind of does. But I like honest poetry and poetry that speaks to me. And I don't remember how I came across your book. I want to say it was on Instagram, and I thought the truck cover was intriguing, but I liked the title. And I was like, well, and I think I went to your page and then I kind of, got an idea what it was about, and I just kind of bought it. But I never, to be honest with you, I never, you're like the first person in a long, long time that had really put a lot of thought into your poetry book. And what I mean by that is that when I lived in Atlanta, a lot of people were really good at writing, but they just never put a lot of thought into the whole package, like the whole book, the cover, the guts of it, the text, the images, what it represented. And I thought I was the only one that did that. So that was another reason I liked it, because you put a lot of thought into it creatively. And so it was something that I wasn't used to seeing from a poet, because a lot of poets that I know don't treat poetry like a regular novel. And I think every book is a book. So again, but there are some people that aren't into poetry like that. But I really, really love the concept. And then the fact that you were a Black man was even more wonderful. And honestly, I didn't, as far as the gay part, I really didn't know that, which was another thing,
Mm.
which was curious, because I didn't, which is, will get to my questions that I have about the book, is it's written in such a way where it could have went either way. I mean, like I said, I really didn't, I don't think it's a gay book per se at all. I
Mhm.
think it's very a Black man being honest about what's going on in his
Mhm.
world, and I believe everybody else's world too. But I just wanted to say I really liked the book, that it was very conceptually well thought out. And I say kudos to you for writing it in such a way where I think anybody could appreciate it. I was
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I was very intentional about just writing unapologetically for my community. And being a first time author, I did put a lot of pressure on myself. So I was, just saying to myself, every poem just has to slap. Like it just
right,
has to be great because I got to prove that, I'm worthy of being in this poetry space.
right.
And so I really appreciate that. I appreciate you seeing that I did put a lot of effort in just thinking this project out. And so, yeah, that's really good to hear.
But one of my first questions is what you kind of touched on it in the early part in your introduction, but what inspired it, this particular first book of poems, and when did it come to fruition in your mind? Like, this is what I want to do.
I would say what really inspired it was, just working in the mental health field and seeing that many Black men and Black boys weren't getting the individualized treatment that they deserved, and having this like cookie cutter way of fixing problems within our community, which I thought was just such a uh, just unfortunate thing with just within my circle of clinicians that I was working with. And so I think what inspired it was me wanting to make sure that I could present something that could make them feel heard and validated and just uplifted as kings. I started writing this book in June of 2020, and I believe there was a spike in the suicide rates of just Black men and Black boys, and just with COVID happening and everything going on. And so that really just inspired me to just write something that could be more of accessible to them. And so, of course, I came to a realization that I can't just provide therapy to every
Right,
Black man and Black boy. So
right.
the book would be more of an accessible resource to reach more people, to help heal them and motivate them to take care of their mental health, but to also just remember like the rich Black history that we come from, empowering them in the process.
Well, first of all, again, kudos for that. And I
Thank
actually
you.
want to invite you to do another podcast. And I mean, because I know I definitely want to talk about the mental health
Hmm.
challenges. And I want to do a whole episode on that. And I want to have a couple other guests on. And I hope that you'll be available to join us for that because I want to touch base with you about that. I really, honestly, I have a lot of emotions when it comes to even when I learned that you were a mental health therapist. I have so many questions about that particular industry and
Mm.
field. I mean, like a multitude of questions. And I definitely will touch base with you as and even during this conversation, some things I want to ask you about that because
Hmm.
again, it's very intriguing. Because to be honest with you, I had a white therapist when I lived in Atlanta, so I'm interested in the opposite side of the fence and what kind of again what goes on that side in terms of being a black therapist and some of the things that maybe you've encountered. But I want to say first, when it comes to black men and poetry, I'm gonna be honest with you. Now, I've had a hard time really selling to us in terms of men. Now,
Hmm.
gay men, straight men, because I think there's a stereotype with poetry. How
Hmm.
would you sell your poetry to someone who doesn't read poetry? Meaning, like, there's a reader out there, there's a man out there that doesn't read, that isn't aware that poetry is a window into other worlds. How do you, what are you saying to that guy? What would you say to that guy to say, pick up my book? This is something that I think you could appreciate.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up because that's also been a bit of a challenge for me as well. Just speaking with potential readers of my poetry, they're like, I've never read poetry, and but I always let them know that even though the structure of the writing may be foreign to them, the topics are could be super relevant
Right.
to their experiences and things that they may be going through. And so within my poetry, I do try to, like I said, keep the topics current and also relevant across generations.
Right.
I'm finding it more difficult or challenging to sell to individuals within lower age ranges
Yeah.
versus, the older generations, because most of them do know about, great poets such as Maya Angelou and Warren Cooney and Audre Lorde and Langston Hughes, but the younger population is, like, what is this about?
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
and so we know that even hip hop is a form of poetry,
Yeah, exactly.
and different, just music styles are, forms of poetry. So I presented it to them in a way like, this is, relevant to you because of the, topics and the themes that are discussed in my book, and that, maybe the language could be similar to music, or any other, form of artistic written work, that they may be used to.
Oh wow. Actually,
Hmm.
it's funny you said that, but with young people, I've always had a different audience in terms of it's always kind of been a wide range of people. And what I didn't like, and I don't know if you have the same issue, is
Hmm.
I've never considered myself a gay writer. And
Hmm.
I know they're like Langston Hughes, and you look at James Baldwin. I don't consider
Hmm.
them gay writers. I think they were writers who happen to be gay, and
Right.
they happen to be black. And
Hmm.
again, I it just seems like that's the one time I don't like titles. That's the one time
Yes.
because to me, it almost seems like you're just writing to that particular group of people. And
Hmm.
like with your book, you're not writing to gay men. I mean,
Right.
they're part of the conversation, but you're writing for the straight man too. So
Oh, yes.
the straight man is like is hesitant to pick up the book because it feels like, oh, it's going to be about gay stuff. And
Hmm.
I've heard that. And I used to get offended by it, but in the beginning I was like, you know what? No, that's not the case. It's like
Right.
open your mind up and don't limit yourself to thinking that way because again,
Hmm.
that's I was taking it personal because I felt like I'm writing these books for you, for black men, my experience. So,
Hmm.
but now I'm in a space where what I've learned about poetry and books is that you can lead them to water, but as they say,
Hmm.
and you can't make them drink. The only thing you can do is just lead them to the book or lead them to the work and say, you know what, I'm gonna let you do the rest. Let God take hold and say, because when I opened up your book,
Hmm.
there's a poem that I would like for you to read,
Okay.
and the black artist in corporate America. That one
Hmm.
spoke to me specifically because
Hmm.
it it's a challenge. I mean, it's we don't have enough time to talk about the challenges of being a black artist in corporate America. And
Hmm.
I've struggled with that for years, but I didn't know that's what it was. That being an artist working in a corporate box has been a real challenge for me, mentally, emotionally, professionally, the whole nine. But it also had brought out some things in me. So I have to ask you, where did that poem come from? And to be
Hmm.
honest with you, I don't know about your pain. Your poetry reeks pain to me. I don't.
Hmm.
I can't say that
Hmm.
every poem is angry or sad, but
Hmm.
I don't know any poet that's not the blood and sweat is not on these pages. It's like so. Correct me
Hmm.
if I'm wrong, but
Hmm.
where did that particular poem come from? And then was it hard putting it together? And is there a little bit of pain and angst and anxiety in it? If you understand what I'm asking.
Of course, of course. So, yes, so I would say, being someone that has also worked in corporate America, I was actually working in corporate America at the time while writing this poem,
Right.
and there was a lot of internal conflict, which is knowing that I needed to put work into this project, but also, having to work 9 to 5 and pay bills,
Right.
and after getting home at 5, I'm like, I don't even have enough creative energy
Right.
to, pour into this project, and it would lead to a lot of just internal pain for me, because I'm like, I'm putting so much of myself into a company that's not, really benefiting me, versus a project that's so dear and personal, to me. And so I know, working in corporate America, we use a lot of the, well, for me particular, using a lot of the left side of my brain,
Right.
so much that, like I said, when you get home, you don't have the mental energy to go into the right side and use that creative energy that you have. And so
Right.
I think it was just important for me to uh, really save space for that intentionally,
Right.
to not like try to exceed at everything at work, if I'm just being blunt,
Right.
so I can really just have that energy for myself. And so, and even, being a black artist in corporate America, if you're just a creative at heart,
Right.
you're going to have those thoughts and ideas that's even coming up when you're working your 9 to 5.
Right.
So a
Exactly.
lot of times I'm putting together these monthly reports, but in the margins, I'm writing like, you know, uh, just like scripts and poems and things that are coming to mind, and I'm like, man, it's just difficult to compartmentalize. And so yeah, so that's why I write like one day, in the poem I write, one day his art alone will thicken his pockets,
Right.
so he can just really focus on his art versus doing a 9 to 5 to make ends meet. And
Right. Exactly.
not having to push the poetry or the art to the side, because he's an artist first. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Do you
Hmm.
mind reading it, or do you have that in front of you?
Of course, yes, I have it right in front of me.
Yeah. And actually, after that one, if you don't mind doing another one, whatever your choice. That's my particular speak to poem. But I mean, I love the book, but
Okay.
that one in particular. And if you want to
Hmm.
do another one after that, but I would love to know whatever poem you do after that, what inspired that particular poem and why you chose to read that one.
Okay, yes, I'll go ahead and read A Black Artist in Corporate America, and then I'll read the first poem. Well, the second poem of the book is called The Brotherhood Table,
Mm.
and we kind of touched on the uh, we touched on how the book is, basically for every black man, and
Right.
how it really promotes the diversity. Well, how, yeah, honors the diversity within our community.
Exactly.
So I would like to read the Brotherhood Table, just to give an idea of kind of where I was coming from with that.
Okay, cool.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. So, a black artist in corporate America. Up at 6, same routine. He washes his face and gathers his coffee beans. The morning hours are attached to an invisible spinning wheel, but noon can feel like years away after an artist steps into corporate America to start the day. His body hammered to a desk while respecting his employer's culture and politics. And the brother tries to resist the inevitable pressure to code switch. He works from 9 to 5 to keep the landlady from knocking, and dreams that one day his art alone will thicken his pockets. It's quite difficult for the brother to turn off his creative mind while he's working a 9 to 5. He makes a promise to return to his craft and attend to her needs, but he's so tired from a long day's work, so he sacrifices her time to recharge and breathe, subsequently suffocating the dream.
Excellent, excellent, excellent.
Thank you.
I love that poem, man. I mean, it just I got to
Mhm.
go to work right after this. Literally right after this podcast, I got my clothes laid out. I got to go straight to work. But I'm just being
Yeah.
honest. Got to do the grind thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
would.
I understand. Same here. Same here. So
I, okay, I'm ready for the next one.
all right. The Brotherhood Table. We black men breathe air in the lungs of brotherhood when we come together and respect each other despite our differences. We may be from various backgrounds and cultures, but all black men are brothers. We nurture brotherhood. We gave it a name. Brotherhood is the first son for all kings. Each of us has a hand in raising him. So we reserve a seat for him at the table and make sure he is fed. The businessman and the man without a plan. Brothers who are ambitious and brothers suffering from mental illness. The recluse and brothers enveloped in substance abuse. The healthy, the strong, and brothers who've been told they won't live long. The widow, the unconcerned, and brothers with third-degree burns. Brothers with a lot of wealth and brothers with nothing left. The collegiately educated and the brothers who came straight out of high school pounding the pavement. The mute, the physically and sexually abused, the father stuck in his ways. Conversely, you kings parenting our beautiful brothers and sisters like Marlon Wayans and Dwayne Wade. Brothers in hoodies, the popular, the bullied. The Greeks, the brands, and the all around family man. The Sikh, the Muslim, the atheist, the Mason, the priest, the Southern Baptist preacher, the brother with alopecia, The convicted felon, the heir, and you brothers who are visually impaired. The black boy in foster care, the grandfather physically challenged to make it up the stairs. The brother with vitiligo, the veteran hopeful for tomorrow. The brother with hearing loss, the artist without a car. The wheelchair bound and physically able. Brothers, you are all welcome at this table.
Wow. I mean, I'm sitting here like, wow. I'm just first of all, that
Yeah,
it
yeah.
it was
Yeah,
pretty
thank you.
it's pretty self-explanatory where that came from. I
Right.
I have to say honestly, it's renewing my faith
Mm,
in. Honestly, I'm not going to get into a soapbox, but I've been
mhm,
having challenges with my people. I'm not going to lie. I mean, black men and women,
mhm,
and
mhm,
because everything I do is for black people. I mean, specifically. I mean, I'm very
mhm,
intentional, like you said.
mhm.
And your book, the timing of me receiving it has been about the mental health part, but also I've been hurt by quite a few of
Yeah.
my own people. I mean, to be honest with you, throughout my life,
Mhm,
family,
mhm,
friends, people I thought were my friends, and it it's very difficult for me to trust and to forgive. I still do things intentional. I still love us as a people,
mhm.
and it's something I remember. Joyce Meyer is a minister, online minister. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
Yes, I
Something
love that.
she shared years ago that sometime God will put you in places where you're the only person in the room. I won't say Christian, but that was the word that she used, when you're the only Christian in the room, and but that's why you're there. And
Mhm,
I find myself, I call myself more of a spiritual believer. I don't really quote unquote like the label of Christian, but what
mhm,
it, I found myself being the only one in the room and
mm,
feeling like that's why I'm there. And sometimes I feel like it's a weight to carry to be that
mhm.
person, because my poetry is just painful. I love writing poetry, but I write about everything. I mean,
Yes.
everything. And it's even now I have to say, and I don't know if you have this same issue, but sometimes I cuss in my poems. Not all the time. I mean,
Mhm,
and sometimes I'll say things. That's where I put all my anger, my frustration, my sadness, my love, everything goes into
mhm,
that. And
mhm,
to be honest with you, when I started going to different poetry events in Atlanta, I was starting to hang out with other poets so I could find my voice to do poetry in front of people. And
mhm,
a lot of my female poet friends were so ratchet to me. I mean, they were just like saying stuff like, I just, I wasn't ready. And I was like, well, if they can say
mhm,
this, then I can say that, you know? So
mhm,
they actually helped me with my confidence. So
mhm.
I have to say, I do it for my people, but
Yeah.
it's sad when they don't treat your work or treat you with the same respect that they may treat someone else. And one other thing is that the issue, it's never stopped me from doing poetry or writing the books. And I guess my point is that, like, even with your book, you could have put a naked person on the cover, or you could have been doing something
Yes.
sexual to sexualize the book. And people have told
Mhm,
me to do that. Well, you should do this to make your sell, you'll sell more books. But it
mhm,
contradicts who I am. That's not.
mhm.
And I've been on the cover of my books, but I've never sold that. And I could tell you with every book why I did it, what was the intent, and
Mhm,
and where I was. But I don't want to sell my soul to,
mhm,
and I guess I'm
mhm,
just disappointed, and I'm saying that to say, this is your first book, and again, I'm
mhm.
not trying to gaslight you and thinking, black people are just not going to support you, but
Right.
it was a tough pill to swallow when your people don't get behind you the way you would like, and
Yes.
you shouldn't have to do things to do a song and dance to sell your
Mhm.
work. Like, even with this podcast, I want people to get on and hear us talking and being honest and saying, okay, just like me saying, I love my people, but I've been hurt by my
Mhm.
people. And I write about
Mhm.
that hurt. Like, I wrote a poem in my last book called Broke Nigga.
Mm.
And I don't use the word nigga. I really
Right.
don't. But
Mhm.
it came from a song. It was a Cardi B song, and it was a
Mhm.
Jasmine Sullivan song, and I kept hearing the same thing. broke niggas can't have none. Broke niggas can't have this. Broke
Yeah.
niggas can't have that. And
Yeah.
I was like, excuse me. And at the time, I didn't have a job. I was going through some stuff. So I said, so what does that make
Mm-hmm.
me? You know what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
I was offended by it. It's like, so
Mm-hmm.
you're generalizing. So I just feel like when they're dismissing your work, I take it personally sometimes, and I know I shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I said, how do you maneuver? And I know this is your first book, and I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, I do.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And man, we are discussing some really great points here because, um, and I think it's a very important point that for me going into this process, I really worked hard at having a objective lens when it came to writing about our experiences, because like I said, this really could have been a book about a gay black boy who grew up and just fought against what was around him. But instead, I was, like I said, I really aimed to have a very objective lens when it came to just writing about us in our community.
Right.
And I think it was important for me to not let my trauma, and not trying to make this about like, mental health or anything. And I'm not even saying this is about you.
Right.
But for me, just not letting my trauma and, my inner child who needed some healing to write,
Right.
you know, instead, not letting that take power or
Right.
take over. Like it's important to let them write,
Right.
but to not let them, let it or let the inner child take power of the project, and to, in a sense, for me, do it from a objective lens. And so, I think it's, like I said, was challenging just knowing that, mostly black women have actually bought my book.
I believe
And
that.
they're like, but the book is for, written for black men and black boys. But they're
Right.
like, oh, my son needs this or my husband needs this. And I have received a great support from, other, black men and black, but not in comparison to black women. And so it was important for me to just keep it, from a very objective lens
Right.
and to allow myself to be vulnerable and to talk about, the different experiences that I've had, just being in the black community and, not being supported at times,
Right.
but to also understand that, I can lean into a different space
Right.
to really, write about other people's experiences and doing that also kind of help heal me as well,
Right.
knowing that I don't have to stay in the hurt.
Right.
I can move around to other spaces that can be healing for me, but it is definitely a challenge to when you feel alone in
Right.
the creative process and the
Exactly.
writing process,
Exactly.
because not everyone is going to understand it. I'm pretty sure, coming from a small town, I'm probably the only published black poet
Right.
from my town. And so, yeah, you definitely have to just, stand by your work and just really just keep going, because it can be very lonely in these author streets.
Yeah. And actually,
Yeah.
it. But what I really love about being alone is that it's created a lot of things that probably wouldn't have happened if I wasn't in that space. And
Hmm.
so that part I really love, because I love being a poet. I actually,
Me too.
it's a really an extension of who I am. The fact that I can write about anything, I wake up, like you said, I'll wake up in the middle of the night, and if I hear the words, I just start to write it. And sometimes I'll go back and like, I wrote that, like where was I at, but and that's why I love other poets. I don't know that many black male poets. I know a few, but I knew a lot more females. And what I love about your book also is that I hate when people say, "Oh, he's deep" or "she's deep." I don't think you were writing to be deep. I think you were just writing. So
Hmm.
if it's your perception that it's deep, then that's great. But I don't think you were writing, because I don't write to be deep. I'm just writing my thoughts. So the fact
Hmm.
that the reader perceives it as deep is there. Everybody's going to have a different take on it. So that's why I said I really feel like when I read people's poetry, and again, I love poetry, but sometimes I think people are using so many words like I also
Mhm.
like the fact that your poems don't have to be long. You have short poems
Mhm.
as well, and I do too. So it's like that's where the thought ended. That's where the emotion ended. So it's not one of those things where you have to have 4 and 5 pages of the same thought, which again doesn't take away from the credibility of the poem, but sometimes it's just that's just where it went. And when I read poetry that sometimes seems to go on, or you're kind of you don't know what the point is, and I
Mhm.
like your straightforwardness and the subject matter. And that's the other part I like about your book is that you did pick subjects that were relevant. I mean, like this book could
Mhm.
you could read this book now and 30 years from now. So, and it'll have the same feeling. It'll carry over
Mhm.
like 20, 30, 40 years. If you a grandfather or, you a great uncle and they like picked up this book, what I love about it is that they'll know what their great uncle would do or what he did in those special. Well, if you got a cousin or a child that's in corporate America and they pick up your
Mhm.
book, it's like, oh, okay, that's what he did. So you
Mhm.
should be very proud that you're putting that seed into the universe, as they say,
Thank you.
even though it might not. I know my books have landed where they were supposed to land,
Mhm.
so, but because my issue was, well, who's reading it? Nobody's telling me anything. So, but
Mhm.
now I don't worry about it, you know,
Yeah.
just like I don't know who's listening to the podcast, but I know people are listening. So I don't know
Mhm.
who's going to get something from the conversation. And then also from this conversation, I'm a black
Mhm.
gay man, you're a black gay man. We're not
Mhm.
stereotypes. So
Right.
you're going to get, if a woman is listening, she's, oh my God, it's like
Mhm.
you're getting another perspective that, stop looking for the stereotype, stop looking for the obvious or what you
Mhm.
think a black collegiate, non-collegiate, all those men that you named, some of them are
Mhm.
gay. Some of them are
Yeah.
gay too.
Exactly. They just happen to be gay, right?
Right. I mean, like you
Yeah.
said, I mean, and everybody that's at that table with all those backgrounds can be gay too. So
Mhm.
again, it's like one of those things. That's why I like the book, and I like that, and that's why again, when I first introduced myself to you, I wanted to know: is this guy really this guy? Is he really who? Because I'm not gonna lie. It gets back to what I said earlier.
Mhm.
Especially when I lived in Atlanta. I love Atlanta, but some
Mhm.
people selling stuff that they not. That's not who they are,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
their images they have these great books, but then their whole image and the way they project themselves is totally opposite of what they're selling. So I'm like,
Mhm.
let me see if is he in alignment with this book. Is he really that guy? Because
Mhm.
honestly, I was like, look, if he's not that guy, I'm like, I ain't trying to do this interview, but I needed to know.
Right.
And again,
Right.
because again, I've met people literally
Mhm.
that weren't specifically black people, men and women that weren't.
Mhm.
They contradicted their work, and I'm just
Mm.
like, okay, wait a minute now. That's not who because I am who I say I am. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I mean, I'm pretty
Yeah.
much, and like I said, everything I've done between 2005 and now is who I am. I could tell you where I was, what I was feeling, why I wrote
Mhm.
that poem. Like you said, I stand by my work. And
Yeah.
I was a young person, writing
Mhm.
all the way up to now. And my poetry, like your first book, I'm sure 20
Mhm.
years from now won't sound like this per se. It might even be
Right.
stronger. It might even be
Mhm.
more,
Mhm.
it's like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
more like, and
Mhm.
again, I can only imagine what didn't make the book. You know what I mean? The poems that didn't get
Yes.
in here.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
how do you get it down to? And then the other thing, last thing I was going to say was that
Mhm.
some poetry books have, I think my first book was like 50 pages. And it
Mm.
with poetry book, I don't know. It's just because people always say, how many poems should you have? And honestly, I think you have the right amount. So, I
Mm.
mean, was it hard to figure out which poems was going
Mhm.
in? And did you like, oh, is this too many poems? I mean, how was your process on that?
I think I eliminated maybe 10 poems or 15. I had like 115 or 120 total. And so the book is entitled A Book of Poems for Black Kings. And one strategy that I used to eliminate poems was to make sure it wasn't, a book of poems for Fulterius King.
Right.
It really had to, cover men from, various backgrounds and just, different situations.
Right.
And so I didn't do a lot of eliminating. I've heard poets writing 200 poems and they get it down to 100.
Right.
And I think for me, before every writing session, and not to make this like super religious or anything,
Oh,
but
go ahead.
um i was I always asked God to give me the words.
Right.
I prayed that God would give me the words, and I'm not that writer who just goes on like writing marathons and just write and write and write. I really wait for my soul to direct me with just putting the words on paper. And so for me, every poem that I wrote was like, most for the most part, could be included in the book. So I didn't do a lot of, like I said, editing, just, taking things out. And so it was a very just spiritual process for me. And just to go back a little bit to what you said about, not worrying about, who's listening or who's reading. To me, after, writing this book, it was just fulfilling a spiritual assignment. And that in itself gave me so much joy. I didn't care how many people read it. I mean, I would like for, a lot of people to read it, but,
Exactly.
as long as I fulfilled that spiritual assignment, because I really felt like I had to do this,
Right.
the joy came from that. And so I know I'm going a bit on a tangent, but basically,
Oh no, that's
the
fine.
editing process was, it wasn't, that difficult or challenging for me, because I just wanted to, every time I wrote, it was, really from a spiritual place.
And actually, I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to know. So no, you're definitely not going on a tangent at all, because I write
Okay.
from that place, and
Mm,
and everybody's process is different, because again, I some people write about trauma and relationships and love and sex and all that, which I'm not knocking. But I
mm-hmm,
like the fact that your book was, and most of the poets that I do like have that same, like yours. It's, you're writing about God, you're writing about your day, you're writing about nature and love and relationships and friendships and family, and those are the books I
mm-hmm,
prefer to read. I mean, I
mm,
just having a whole book of about sex and
right.
brokenheartedness. I don't necessarily want to read a whole book about it. So,
Mm-hmm,
and a lot of poets seem to lean toward that, or a whole book about their relationships, or being heartbroken or whatever. And like you said, I write about the person that has had a broken heart and what I did to get over it, what I did
mm-hmm,
to fall back in love again. So I do ask God to give me the words. And sometimes I think the words come from God. It just comes to
mm-hmm,
me. There are poems that'll just write themselves. And
mm-hmm,
I have to agree with you 100%, but I know everybody doesn't write that way. Everybody doesn't come from
mm-hmm,
that place. And again, it gets back to what I was saying earlier. I wanted to see if this is who you really were. And
mm-hmm,
and then also I wanted to ask you about the cover. And I had a question about it. I honestly wasn't thinking it was you. I honestly, because I've done covers where I wasn't on the cover and I've used another person's image, but it wasn't until
mm-hmm,
later I found out that it wasn't you. But what, and then conceptually with the hair, explain that whole, I mean,
mm-hmm,
I love that hair concept. I mean, I don't,
mm-hmm.
what the cover, the inside, explain where all of that came from, if you can.
Of course. So I work with an amazing cover designer. His name is Noah Davis, from St. Petersburg, Florida, and I was able to connect with him through my editor. And I conveyed to him that I really wanted a strong image for the cover, but I didn't want anything like so stereotypical, because prior to writing this book, like I didn't really see a lot of images, honestly, that was representative of just black kings and black men. That we say a black king, like we said, has to be this chiseled person, and
Exactly.
he has to be educated, and he this and that. But you really can't put an appearance on a black king. A black king is someone who knows where he comes from, and knows that his crown has been bought and paid for, in the words of James Baldwin, and he moves as such. And so I didn't want to put too much um, uh, I didn't want to put too much focus on like the body and all of that. I just wanted a very uh, strong gaze into like the reader's eyes, which is the reason why I chose the front cover. If you look at his eyes, most of us as black men, we have that. We have that like
Yeah.
that gaze, that strong kingly gaze that we can kind of tap into. And so I wanted that for the cover. And then as far as the creative process in terms of the journey that that the book has. So the book starts with the first section is called New Braids,
Right.
and the poems within that section are intended to empower black men and remind them of their inherent worth. And then the second section is called Managing the Frizz, and the poems within that section are intended to validate black men and black boys' experiences and help them navigate difficult emotions. And the last section is called Afro the Let Out, with poems that aim to facilitate that soul searching and self acceptance. So I've read many poetry books where, the poems are divided into seasons, like the spring poems, the summer poems, the
Right.
winter
Right.
poems, and no shade to these poetry books, but I really wanted the journey of this book to be very black. And it was very appropriate for me to start with New Braids and then like the Managing the Frizz and Afro the Let Out, because historically we black people carry a lot of our emotions in our hair.
Yeah.
I too have been someone who have had braids in the past, and when I have fresh braids, I felt very confident and
Exactly.
just really sure of myself. And then going into that frizz, I'm like, ooh, I'm not so confident. And,
Right.
and I'm
Right.
like, like it's giving a little Kunta Kinte over here. Like I need to like
Right.
tame this down. What is going on?
Right.
And then when I let out those braids that lead to that afro, I always get that peaceful
Right.
feeling, like I've always just knowing I had this natural, beautiful crown under all of the taming that the braids, that I had with the braids. And so it was just very appropriate for me to just, do it that way. The braids symbolizing new beginnings and feeling confident. So those are the themes that are within the poems within that section. And then manage the frizz where, navigating those difficult emotions, leading to Afro being a symbol of liberation and self-acceptance. So yeah, I know it's
What?
it's very detailed, but I want it to be just very relevant for us.
Oh, let me just say, and I
Mhm.
gotta go back because I had just got my book in the mail, and I had just got my hair braided, and
Mm,
and it was so funny because that really did happen, and I was like, but I have to say everything you said is true because I've been wearing my
mm,
hair natural. I've had locks and afros. I've been wearing my hair natural probably for the last 25 years,
mm,
and doing the cornrow thing more recently now than I stopped and then I cut it and then I went back and then I have cornrows, but I had just unbraided my hair, and there's a picture I use as my profile picture. And everything you said was everything I feel when I let my hair loose. And
mm.
and it's that I feel so blackety black that I'm not even gonna lie. Even especially living in Oklahoma, because some people
Oh
really
yes.
get when I tell you the looks of uncomfortable, and then sometimes I wear my earrings because I have both my ears pierced, and every now and then I'll put some earrings in there, but I do it on
Mhm.
purpose. I've never. I wish I could have been this guy in high school and when I was
Mhm.
younger, but because I had such a self conscious. But I do it on purpose. I mean, the nappier my hair is, it's like I'm
Mhm.
happy nappy. I mean,
Mhm.
and I don't have that good
Mhm.
hair. Like they say, good hair. I have, I have that
Mhm.
naturally thick, hair that is,
Yeah.
and I am proud of it. I honestly, because
Yep.
I've never felt. Never, ever in my life. And I done had Jerry
Mhm.
curls. I done had plaits. My mother took us through,
Mhm.
straightening our hair for our pictures or whatever. But I
Mhm.
never had a personal pride with my hair. Never.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
up until, like I said, the last 20 years, like when I got my locks, like you said, when I got my hair twisted and it
Mhm.
did bring forth an arrogance and not arrogance, a confidence
Mhm.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
I I love it. I'm not gonna lie. Even when I was going up and
Mm-hmm.
down with my weight, as long as my hair was nice, my hairline, I was you couldn't tell me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
so so and actually I have to tell you, there's a young lady in Atlanta that you have to introduce yourself to. Her name is
Okay.
Henny. Henny is a
Kenny.
she's a beast when it comes to hair. We met on the bus. She used to come. I cut my hair, and I remember she's from New York. She has her own shop now, her and her husband,
Mm-hmm.
and she started doing my hair. She would come over and do my hair. She would braid and whatnot. I mean, when I'm talking about she's a straight hood in New York, I mean, she is a hustler. She will come with every,
Mm.
and this girl is a beast when it comes to hairstyles. But I remember asking her to do Afro puffs,
Mm.
and she took my hair and she actually took. I had like all these millions of Afro puffs in my hair with the rubber bands, and
Mm.
it was so flat. And she had cut all these parts in my hair, and it was just so. And I went to work, and they never said anything to me at work. I mean, I know they were like, "Mo's always coming to work with these kind of hairstyles," but I said all that to say that I
Mm-hmm.
love that conception. I mean, conceptualized
Thank you.
thought in because I had never seen that when I saw it managing the
Mm-hmm.
frizz and and I thought this is
Mm-hmm.
so cool. He really put some thought into this. I mean, I was like, I wish I thought of that, but what I love about it again is how I feel because right now I'm
Mm-hmm.
managing the frizz. My hair is getting frizzy right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm debating on whether I should take it a
Mm-hmm.
loose or not. But again,
Mm-hmm.
just laughing and talking with you about hair
Mm-hmm.
and the freedom of it is
Mm-hmm.
that's different. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when we could be
Mm-hmm.
talking about all the stereotypical things that black men talk about, that's
Mm-hmm.
I love that we're talking about this. And again, I've really enjoyed talking with you. I mean, again, this is one of those. That's why I said I
Mm-hmm.
hate to, just for an hour, but I
Yeah.
really just wanted the audience to know who you were, and of course, I want you to
Mm-hmm.
sell books. I do. I really want people to. I want these books to get in the right hands.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, I really want to sell your book in my store, and that's something we could talk about offline. I really want to know how I
Oh
can
yeah.
purchase a sizable amount that I can actually put in my store because I have some ideas that I want to how I would like to present it in my store, as well as
Mm-hmm.
other poets and other writers. I really want to, I really want to help as much as I can put their work
Mm-hmm.
into the universe, kind of thing. But I want to ask
Mm-hmm.
you, how can people reach you? What avenues, what links, where can they go to get more about you and to find out what you're doing next?
Of course. And it's just been such a pleasure talking with you today as well. And I'm just so happy to connect with, another brother in poetry and in writing. And so thank you so much for this opportunity.
No
Uh,
problem.
People can reach me on Instagram at FULTERIUS King is at FULTERIUSKING. They can also subscribe to my website, www.fulteriusking.com, for future updates about this project that I'm currently working on, or that I've produced to the world, and also future projects that may come up as well. So you can subscribe to my website, or you can follow me on Instagram. My book is available everywhere books are sold online. The audiobook, the ebook, hardback, and paperback are available everywhere. They're available. Books are sold online. So thank you.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know about the audio
Thank you.
part. One
Mm-hmm.
last question,
Mm-hmm.
and I read the poem. I'm calling it the Eos poem, and I know I'm misquoting it.
Mm-hmm.
Fulterius. Now,
Yes.
can you
Yes.
give us a brief? And I know you talked about it in the book, but I really want to hear it in your words for the
Mm-hmm.
audience because I was like, I wanted to make sure I was saying it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Where did it derive from, and how did you grow into it, or did you always love it, or what's the story behind your name and your relationship with your name?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. So, um, well, as my earliest memories, I remember really loving my name, because everybody, every other black boy was an Aries baby, right? It was,
Right, right,
Kentarius,
right,
Shatarius, or something.
right,
But as I grew older, moving off, going to college, getting into corporate America,
right.
I would get a lot of people get, very impatient just with my name and trying to cut it off,
Right.
like, oh, we got to give you a nickname. And, surprisingly, it actually came from a lot of more black people than white people.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. People saying like, oh, your name is too long. It's just not, it's too unique. But I'm like, you're okay with pronouncing Da Vinci and Michelangelo and all
Right.
of these,
Right.
biblical names, but you can't pronounce my name. So you will pronounce my name. You will not Europeanize
Right.
it.
Right.
This
Exactly.
is my name.
Right.
And so I've grown to love my name even more. Being in corporate America, they'll say, well, you need to, just whitewash yourself basically, like,
Right.
and just conform. But I've always been radical in the sense of just standing by who I am
Right.
and in my name as well. I mean, I haven't always been that way, but actually I'm more like that now. And so um yeah, yeah. I am not tolerant of anyone cutting off my name, or I mean, I do have a nickname,
Right.
but I only allow people who've been calling me my nickname, to
Right.
call me that, who,
Right. Right.
been calling me that for all of my life. So yeah, yeah, it's been a journey.
It and I have to piggyback off what you just said because I don't know if you ever saw that interview with Maya Angelou on, I think she was on Phil Donahue. She was on some show, and a young lady tried to call her by her first name, and she was like,
Yeah.
You don't have a license to call me
Mm-hmm.
by that." And that's how I feel now too, because
Yep.
my name is Mose,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people want to
Mm-hmm.
call me Moses or Mas or Moose,
Yeah.
and I correct people now. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I used to let people get away with calling me Moses, but now I don't. And
Mm-hmm.
first of all, it's my dad's name, and I grew into that
Mm-hmm.
name,
Mm-hmm.
and I stand on my name. So yeah, I'm with you
Yes.
100%. I mean, I don't care
Mm-hmm.
how you can't understand it. This is what you will call me, and
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
and again, I've always been that guy. And honestly, to meet another, much respect to you because again, I
Mm-hmm.
totally understand what you're saying in corporate and black people. Again,
Mm-hmm.
I love my people, but we can be a trip sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we can. You're like, what you say? But no, I want to
Right.
say first of all, thank you, thank you, thank you for
Of course.
joining me in this conversation. I definitely want you to come back, and I want to do a conversation on the mental health. I definitely
Mm-hmm.
want your thoughts on that because I have a lot of questions about
Okay.
therapists and finding and how do people. I just have a lot of questions about that, and I really would like to talk to you about that,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe have some other guests on. And
Oh.
again, I want to say just thank you and enjoy
Mm-hmm.
the rest of your journey on this new, I guess, call it a new opportunity to just share your life with people. And
Mm-hmm.
I hope that you got something from the conversation as well. And I hope
Oh yes.
your listeners and your new fan base will get
Mm-hmm.
something from it as well. And I just want to
Mm-hmm.
say thank you, man. Thank you for joining me.
Of course. You're welcome, man. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm very happy we connected. So thank you so much.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Thank thank you, you too.
All right. Bye
Okay.
bye. Bye bye.
Bye.